Do you know what I realized a couple years ago, couple months, I would even say a year ago? My best ideas don't come actually from working. From when I'm working at my desk, thinking really hard with my iPad in my hand or on my phone or whatever. It doesn't come at that time, okay? It comes when I'm traveling. It comes when I'm in my hobby. It comes from a lot of spaces like that, but never really when I'm working. And I've thought about this. Why? And how can I make this an advantage to make my having more ideas and more better ideas also? So, the first thing you need to understand is this. When you have ideas, it comes from your brain working. It comes from some, you can call it God breathed on you, whatever, but this idea doesn't come from just sitting and waiting for it. You need to be doing things, and traveling is a good one. Last year, here's the thing. Last year, April, May, I went to Japan for 2.5 weeks. This was eye-opening for me because someone has that industrial ideas of YouTube, for example, was like, you know what? I need to make more, and it doesn't work out. I need to make difference. Doesn't work out. You make more, doesn't work out. You're like, I don't have any ideas what I can do anymore. And then you go traveling, Japan. I went also to Singapore. And you see how these people work. You see how these people are going. And you'll be like, okay, if you're a little not touristy, but you're a little thinking for yourself, you will be like, okay, these people are doing like this. So I need to rewire my brain to understand how I can take their brains and make it something for me. Okay, how do you do this? There's a lot of things about it. How do you do this? There's a lot of ways to do this, okay, to doing this. One of the ways to do this is by talking with these people. My big luck on that is I have Japanese friends. I can talk with them. I don't speak Japanese by any means, but English and Google Trad or Apple Translate is very interesting for that. And then you can exchange ideas, you can exchange thoughts, you can exchange ways of doing things, and this is going to be very interesting because you meet people. Actually, the thing between having a hobby that you actually go into and the idea of traveling is the same, is to meet people. So one traveling will give you the thing of another culture. Obviously, if you're in Belgium, you go in France. It's not like you're going to get a crazy culture shock. You live in Belgium, you go to Singapore, or you go to Japan. It's a whole other culture, so it shows you how another part of the world works, and it gives you ideas, and it will give you things, because your brain needs to work another way. That's another thing. Your brain works a certain way when you're there, and it gives you a lot of ideas, for an instance. Then it starts to crave more, and you're like, fuck, I cannot give it, because that's not how I work anymore. I liquidate everything I could. I squished everything I could from that place. Now I need to go elsewhere. And that's where, for example, traveling is good, because you go elsewhere and you'll be like, okay, I go to Japan and people are more like this. People are more like that. People talk like this. People talk like that. They activate certain way of doing their thing. They do it like this, where I do it like that. Why do they do it like this? And you think differently. The whole thing of traveling is to think different, is to understand how other people will think, and how you can come back to your base and see, what do I need to change, or what do I need to interfere, or what can I bring from there here. Singapore was the same thing. When I went to Singapore, and basically when I filmed a couple videos in Singapore, parts of videos in Singapore for the Reptile channel. And here's the thing. Seeing how people from other parts of the world execute things, do things, will give you this idea that you can also do it, but it will also give you the idea of, okay, another point of view, another POV on life, on things. Because, for example, people that keep reptiles in Japan doesn't keep it the same way they keep it in Belgium. So you can then, when after that, if you're a little open, and you should be open about that, you can just mix it up and say, okay, I like how they do in Belgium, that cool keeping and everything. But I like how they do in Japan, that very minimalistic and very essential keeping. How do I mix them both? And that's where you can make new ideas, basically. Then you have the other part is the hobby. The hobby is again the same thing, meeting people, whether it's photography, whether it's tech, whether it's running, whether it's reptiles in my case, whatever. It's about meeting people. It's about talking with people and exchange again. You exchange point of views, you exchange and you understand how other people will think and how the think process of some people. For example, you're very visual, I'm very visual. I'm a guy that will say, I see a thing. Technically what you can call a visionary if you want. I use my eyes, I see a thing, I see where it can go, and I see how I can bring myself in. Sometimes it works, most of the time it didn't, as you might guess. But the idea is there. That's the thing. That the core process is there. And someone that is more like listening, someone that needs to talk, will say, okay, I'm brainstorming with you, I'm talking with you, I'm like, okay, if you do this like that, blah, blah, blah. And the visionary is going to be like, okay, I see what you mean. And by crossing those two ways of thinking, you will get new ideas. It doesn't mean innovation, doesn't mean you're going to invent a new way, a new device, a new whatever it is, but you might just take another angle at the same thing. For example, an example I like to take for the kind of thing about that you don't need to innovate, you just need to be creative, like the phone. Okay? The first smartphone was innovative but not new because the phone, what it's based on, already existed. So it wasn't like a whole new device because it already existed. It was an evolution. It's a new creative way, if you want. And innovation can also be a creative way of using that device. We went from having no touch, just from having big phone, very fat phones to get slim phones like this one, like the iPhone Air, for example. Or you get, you got from, because this is also innovation, for example. Another thing is that, okay, we went from having, keyboards, actual keyboards, having a touchscreen like that. You don't invent the keyboard, you reinvent it, you innovate by being creative. How can I make it into that new thing? That's basically. And how do you get those ideas? I mean, I'm taking that stupid idea as a stupid idea, okay? A very visual idea. You travel. You need to travel. If you don't travel, you're stuck with your ideas or no ideas. That was also a big problem of mine. I didn't have any ideas before my trip to Japan, I took the ideas from others and then I remade it my way with my words, because I don't talk like them and I don't film like them, so I'm making their thing mine. And don't be creative, and was not that creative up until a certain point, up until a certain idea that I had. That's called the European Reptile Tour. Then I went to Japan. I was like, okay, I need to do this. Okay, I think. And I went to Singapore. I had another way, another view on life, another view of the world. And I was like, okay, I can take that and make something else out of it. That's pretty much how it works. So that's why traveling and getting a hobby is very important. First, for your mental health. And second, but we're not talking here about mental health. And second, too, for your ideas, because you can not get infinite amount of ideas by staying at the same place. You need to go somewhere else. And sometimes go somewhere else is walking in the park, maybe, for you. And sometimes walking around is going to help you get ideas. But at some point, staying stuck at the same place won't help you. You will need to move on, to meet people, to see another way of life. Whatever, but you will need that.